Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Under strange and unexplainable circumstances. Most cases remain unsolved. What happened? Where did they go? Locations unknown.
Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joey. Riding with me, as always, is a guy whose name Voldemort doesn't say, Mike Van de Bogart.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you once again to all of our amazing listeners for tuning in. Just a few quick updates here. So first, I would like to give new Patreon shout-outs to Jen Smith, Catherine Deloach, and Mary Quinn. Thank you very much for supporting the show. We couldn't do this without all of the loyal supporters that we have on Patreon, YouTube memberships, Apple subscriptions, Spreaker memberships.
All the things. We got a Spreaker member, I thought, right?
Two.
We got two. Oh, right.
So, and maybe someday X. So, thank you to everyone who supports the show. I'd also like to give an episode suggestion shout out to Taylor Warnock. I think this individual recommended the show a while way back, and we're just getting around to it.
Yes.
So,
thank you for your patience.
We just picked up a new show on Unknown Media Group, so Peanut Butter and Mountain Podcast. Be sure to check them out as soon as you can. A really cool show. And also check out Off the Trails and the Weirdos We Know.
Yes.
Finally, if you want to call the show and leave us a voicemail, you can call 208-391-6913. And we just released an actual voicemail episode to the normal feed just to give people a taste of what people call in with. So we've got some usual suspects that call in every time.
The guy who called in and growled and said an inappropriate thing. It's not super inappropriate, but we were listening, my kids were listening. They're like, they made me replay that one like several times.
North Dakota Ned's called in quite a bit, but we haven't had Montana Mike call in a while. So
yeah, where are you at, Montana Mike?
Listening, call in. Other than that, any updates on your?
I do. I have a correction from the last episode.
Oh, we got a couple corrections actually.
I got one main one, which I'm very upset with myself at. It. I think it literally was more like a Freudian slip. I said you get vitamin C from the sun, and it's vitamin D.
Yes.
Yeah, so I said the wrong vitamin. I apologize. I didn't even realize I said it. And then someone messaged us, do you have a list somewhere else?
I'm pulling up the other two. Just
how major were they?
Pretty major. So, so
that's not good.
So the vitamin C thing was a big one, and I can't believe I missed that too, because that's just kind of common knowledge.
Yeah.
No, so I got something big wrong. The actor who played Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man was actually Alfred Molina.
Molina.
And the guy who played Sir John Franklin in the AMC show is actually Syrian Hines.
Okay.
I looked him up on Google. They kind of do look the same.
Mm-hmm. You're trying to,
yeah. So...
I thought you got scurvy from not being in the sun when it was supposed to be citrus fruits. So,
yeah, in the final correction, no one actually called me out on this, but there was a river in Canada, a major river that the expedition was trying to get to once their ships got stuck, and it was called the Back River, and I called it the Black River.
Okay.
So,
That's terrible.
well, people will call in about stuff like that.
No,
so.
I'm saying that's terrible that you did that. I'm saying you're a terrible person. So
those are the corrections from our last episode. Other than that, Mr. Vitamin C.
All right, everybody, let's gear up and get out to explore locations unknown. September 24th, 2005. A 34-year-old mother of 4 from Lakewood, Colorado, and her friend went to hike Mount of the Holy Cross in White River National Forest. One of them would never come back. Join us this week as we investigate the strange disappearance of Michelle Vanek.
So, Joe,
Yes.
when I was researching this episode, I figured this would be near and dear to your heart because you are someone that's tried to summit several 14ers in Colorado.
Yes.
And from my research, this one has a route that's kind of easy to summit and one that's really difficult. And I figured you could provide some extra context to trying to summit a 14er.
I will give my context of the ones I've attempted. I've not done this one, and I haven't done a ton, but I appreciate the kind thought. No, so we're going to take place in the White River National Forest on the Halo Ridge route on the Mount of the Holy Cross in Holy Cross Wilderness area. So this 14er gains its name by only 9 feet. It is 14,009 feet tall. It is in the northern Sawatch Range of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. The park was established in 1980, the wilderness area, in 1980. And here's some interesting facts. The highest elevation, with an average elevation of 6,800 feet in Colorado, boasts the highest mean altitude of any U.S. state. So these are all the Colorado facts. There is an abundance of 14ers. The state is home to 58 mountain peaks exceeding 14,000 feet, known as 14ers, more than any other state. You can get a mug that you can cross off all the ones you've done, because there's people that have done all of them in a month or two or something like that.
Wow.
Great Sand Dunes. So Colorado's Great Sand Dunes National Park features the tallest sand dunes in North America, with some reaching the heights of 750 feet. You can actually snowboard on them or sandboard.
Sandboard. I really have wanted to go to Great Sand Dunes National Park. It's on my list.
Yeah, just like farther than the mountains, and you get in the mountains, you're like, oh, maybe I'll just stay here.
Yeah.
We got to like fly there so we're not distracted by mountains.
Yeah.
And in Nederland, Colorado, they host an annual festival called Frozen Dead Guy Days, celebrating a cryogenically frozen man stored in a local shed.
I had to do more research on this one, and it's a real thing.
And it's not Encino Man?
No.
That's literally Encino Man.
Encino. Well, they dug him up out of the ground.
Yeah, in Encino Man, they dug him up out of the ground and they stored him in a shed.
Yeah, that's true. No, this guy's still frozen, though.
Yeah. Oh, well, they just haven't thought him yet.
Yeah.
Brendan Fraser is due for a comeback.
He is.
I mean, the whale kind of was, but he could do another one.
Good.
Mike the Headless Chicken. So in 1945, a chicken named Mike survived for 18 months after being beheaded in Fruita, Colorado, becoming a national sensation.
It's kind of strange.
You're named after him. Refusal of the Olympics. So Colorado is the only state to have turned down hosting the Olympics. In 1976, voters rejected funding for the Winter Games, citing concerns over cost and environmental impact. So let's do an in-depth description of some of the climate features. The Holy Cross Wilderness in Colorado experiences a high-altitude alpine climate characterized by cold, snowy winters and cool to warm summers. Due to its elevation, the area receives precipitation throughout the year, with snow in winter and thunderstorms in the summer, and a drier period in late spring. For instance, Fool's Peak, a summit within Holy Cross Wilderness, is located in Alpine subarctic climate zone. The classification indicates cold, snowy winters and cool to warm summers with precipitation occurring year-round. Some of the temperatures. So daytime highs between June and August will be around 60 degrees Fahrenheit to 75 degrees Fahrenheit at lower elevation. And at night can drop to 35 degrees to 45. Higher elevations can be 10 to 15 degrees lower. In the fall, September to November, daytime highs are 50 to 65, decreasing to 30 to 50 by November, and nighttime lows dropping to 20 degrees and 35 degrees as the season progresses.
So keep that in mind for this case because it happened in
the fall. Yeah, and then in winter, it's typically between 20 and 35, and at nighttime, they fall below zero, especially at the higher elevations. Spring is starting to get nicer again, starting at 35 to 45 degrees in early spring, and by the end, 50 to 65 degrees in May. At nighttime, you're seeing anything ranging from 10 degrees to 30 degrees, which also gradually warms. As we said, the area does receive substantial precipitation, primarily as snow in the winter and rain during the summer thunderstorms. For example, Mount of the Holy Cross, a prominent peak within the wilderness, averages approximately 34.34 inches of precipitation annually. A little bit about the terrain. The Holy Cross Wilderness encompasses over 122,000 acres of diverse, rugged terrain. It offers a quintessential Rocky Mountain landscape. So it's dominated by Sawwich Range. The area features prominent peaks such as Mount of the Holy Cross. And the wilderness is characterized by rugged ridgelines and glacier-carved valleys, creating dramatic elevation changes and scenic vistas. There are numerous alpine lakes, including Lake Constantine and Mystic Island Lake, dot the landscape, often nestled in high-altitude basins. There are a lot of cascading streams and waterfalls that traverse the wilderness, contributing to the area's lush environment. The lower elevations are covered with dense spruce fir forests, providing habitat for diverse wildlife. And above the tree line, the terrain transitions to alpine tundra, characterized by hardy vegetation and exposed rock formations. The entire wilderness offers over 150 miles of trails, ranging from moderate hikes to challenging backcountry routes, allowing visitors to explore its varied landscape. So some of the animals we'll run into out there: elk and mule deer, black bears, mountain lions, bobcats, golden eagles, definitely not grizzly bears, no matter what anybody tells you. The overall difficulty for the Halo route described by Don Dressel, the trail supervisor for Holy Cross Ranger District. I wouldn't go up Holy Cross, even the normal route, at all as my first 14er. Dressler said the Halo route is considered more difficult simply because it's less traveled, unmarked at the top, and requires a lot of scrambling on rocks. Wilson also said the Halo route's terrain is more difficult to traverse, involving a lot of scrambling and talus walking. Both the Halo and North Ridge routes are classified as Class 2 or off-trail hiking on a scale of 1 to 5, Class 5 being the most difficult. The Halo route is 9 miles one way, longer compared to the popular North Ridge route at 6 miles. But the North Ridge route requires more elevation gain because it goes over Half Moon Pass. The North Ridge route is marked with cairns above the timberline, widely used by other hikers and more pronounced due to its heavy use. Halo route is not marked after it passes the Notch and Mountain Shelter. And the reason we're telling you two routes, Mike will get into later. So
Yes.
Stay tuned.
It's key to this case.
It's very key. Just some tips for a safe hike in that area if you are not going to listen and do it as your first 14er. You want to research your route. You want to familiarize yourself with the trail's length, difficulty, and current conditions. And you want to utilize resources like the White River National Forest official site for up-to-date information. Check your weather forecasts because mountain weather can change rapidly. Always review the forecast before your trip. Rule of thumb is you want to be able to summit before noon because storms usually roll in the afternoon. 10 essentials you're going to want to carry. These include navigation tools, headlamp, sun protection, first aid supplies, a knife, fire starting materials, shelter, extra food, extra water, and additional clothing. There's going to be some lightweight hikers that are going to scoff and hem and haw at that, but guess what? We have a lot of very experienced hikers that end up going missing on this show. So it might be extra weight, but you don't. It's kind of like wearing a seatbelt. You don't wear it because you expect a crash to happen. You wear it in case a crash happens.
Yes.
So acclimatizing. Acclimatizing. I was going to say acclimatizing.
I'll say it for you. Acclimate.
Acclimate. You can say them both. The wilderness features elevations ranging from 8,500 to over 14,000 feet. To prevent altitude sickness, you want to ascend gradually and stay hydrated.
I would say if you're going, if you're a sea level dweller like most of us, and you're going to Colorado and you haven't really done a lot of high elevation hiking, maybe go and hang out in one of the mountain towns for a day or two to kind of get used to the elevation before you attempt.
Yeah, just shooting straight up there.
Just go, getting off the plane and going right to the trail.
Yeah. That's good
My
advice.
but
yeah, plus then you get to spend a couple days in a Colorado mountain town,
there's
which
a lot
is amazing.
of really, I was at a wedding in Denver, and I had to wait until late afternoon for the wedding, and I just drove my car. I'm like, I'm going west, and I'm just going to stop at one of the towns I find that's like 2 hours away, and there's a lot of little cool towns kind of spread throughout the Rockies in Colorado. So,
oh, yeah. It's absolutely worth it. You do want to stay on designated trails. This minimalizes environmental impact and reduces the risk of getting lost. Trails are maintained to protect both hikers and the ecosystem. Remember, leave no trace. Wildlife awareness. Bear safety. Black bears do inhabit the area, not grizzlies, black bears. You want to store your food properly, make noise to avoid surprising the bears, and know how to respond if you encounter one.
Especially going around turns.
Yep, always be loud around turns. You don't
Yes.
want to scare each other because they will win. Inform others of your plan. Share your itinerary with a trusted person. You can always send it to us anonymously or not publicly on the social medias. Email it to us, then we'll have it. Include expected return time and route details. We've had a couple listeners send us their itinerary and then check back in afterwards.
Once we get this thing going, we'll set up a more formal free-to-use service where you can leave your itinerary.
Like a check-in, check-out on the website?
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we get notified if they don't check out.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. You want to understand the regulations in the area. The Holy Cross Wilderness has specific rules such as leash requirements for dogs and camping restrictions. And lastly, you want to be aware of your health. So you want to be alert for signs of hypothermia, dehydration, or altitude sickness. Rest as needed and adjust your plans based on your physical condition. Now, Mike, tell us about Michelle.
So the subject of today's case is Michelle Vanek. She was born on February 5th of 1970. She went missing September 24th of 2005. Her remains have not been found. She was a female, age 35 at the time of her disappearance. She now would be 54. She was 5'8", 145 pounds. She had blonde hair, blue eyes. Gear she was last seen in. She was in a blue lightweight ski jacket with white stripes on the sleeves, a black or red shirt, black stretch pants, a blue hat with white stripes, a blue and white mittens. And there's many photos online of her that you can see her in this gear. And we'll get into the case, but I think part of this disappearance and part of what happened was potentially due to the gear she was in. You're doing that
thing where you jump ahead, just get into the story and stop speculating. Go.
We'll cut all that out.
No, we won't.
So, personality, not really any information I could find on her personality. She was a very fit and athletic person. She was into marathon running, so very dedicated to fitness. And she, mother of four, so she was I'm assuming a great family person. Medical issues, nothing that was published indicated she had any type of current medical condition. We don't know what her occupation or hobby was. Experience in the wilderness, so she was known for her athleticism. She participated in many marathons and maintained a regular workout routine, but despite her fitness, she was relatively inexperienced in high-altitude hiking. So, like I said, not very experienced in hiking in high altitudes, and she probably wasn't prepared, and this is kind of from local accounts of what happened. She probably wasn't prepared physically or mentally for the Halo route specifically, which involves hours of scrambling over loose rock across vast swaths of unmarked alpine wilderness. So, according to one of the locals, even if you're physically fit enough to do that route, the mental aspect of the exposure, you're stepping over loose rock for about 6 hours. There's huge crevasses and, large cliffs. If you're not used to seeing that stuff, it can be really scary. So, and it's hiking in alpine conditions is a lot. It's super fun, but it's different. Like
Going a short distance over a scree field really takes it out of you.
yeah.
Like you look at something, you're like, it's only 50 yards, and then it takes you 30 minutes, and you're exhausted.
Yeah, it's because, and also you're mentally exhausted because you're literally looking at every footstep you make, so you don't slip and go tumbling down the mountain. So, getting right into timeline here. So, I'll give you a quick, just kind of plan of what they hoped to accomplish. Her and her hiking partner, which his name was Eric Sawyer. So they hoped to reach the summit of the mountain, and they had two choices to do this. So they could take the Half Moon Trail, which is the standard route known as the Northeast Ridge, or they can take the Fall Creek Trail heading straight south, then climb up the Notch Mountain Trail, which starts near the tree line and cuts back and forth on the way to a stone shelter at 13,224 feet. From there, climbers can follow a looping route around the south side of the mountain, climbing over 3 13ers in the process before reaching the summit. That's known as the Halo Route. So, our timeline starts on September 24th of 2005. It's 6:30 in the morning. So, Michelle, who Joe said, was a 35-year-old mother of 4 from Lakewood, Colorado, and her friend, Eric Sawyer, arrive at the Half Moon Trailhead to hike Mount of the Holy Cross. Now, at this time, from everything I read, there was a lot of construction going on at this trailhead area. So the Forest Service was installing new porta potties, and they had a lot of piles of dirt that were potentially obstructing the trail that they were hoping to take, which was the easier one. And because of this led them to starting on the wrong trail. So, and we already have reports of, by the time Michelle got to the trailhead, she was already starting to complain of a headache. So there's some speculation that even before she started the hike, she was experiencing some minor altitude sickness, which isn't good if you're planning to hike something as demanding as this hike. So there were reports that she did have Excedrin with her. So Excedrin is not going to cure altitude sickness. The only real cure for altitude sickness is to go down in altitude. But Excedrin can ease headaches for people that have minor symptoms of altitude sickness. I've experienced altitude sickness, and it's brutal. I'm sure Joe has too.
I have never.
You've never.
I've never had bad altitude sickness. I've had like minor headaches, and that's it.
I mean, I never
I've
had.
gotten super lucky on that.
Mine came more after the exertion. I had a similar case in Hawaii where we had to. Ben was pretty sick with it. I had to hike the rest of the way with his gear, and then go back and get mine. So
that's always nice.
Yeah,
you're such a nice guy.
So later on during the investigation, Eric told investigators that they walked around the parking lot for a while, but could only find one trailhead, according to the incident report. So it's now September 24th of 2005. It's about mid-morning. So when they reached the cutoff to the Notch Mountain Trail, Eric had Michelle pull out a map. That's when they realized they were on the wrong trail. But they decided they didn't have time to turn around and still make the summit. So in this situation, I think if one of my hiking partners was experiencing kind of mild altitude sickness already, and the other person, Eric, had experience hiking this, probably knew how difficult it was, I would probably just turn around at that point if I knew we were on the wrong trail.
Yeah, so they went there for, what was the original trail they wanted to go on?
They wanted to go on the North Ridge Let me just make sure I get this right. The Northeast Ridge.
Northeast Ridge.
Yeah.
And they ended up on
The Halo route.
the Halo route. Yeah.
But they didn't know it right away until they got up to...
And for those watching, I have the Halo route pulled up, and there is a gnarly amount of switchbacks, like in the middle.
Yeah.
Just to get up on the ridge.
They didn't realize it until they got to the cutoff to the Notch Mountain Trail. So...
Oh, wow. Okay, so they're deep into it.
Yeah. So, like I said, they decided to continue with their plans to summit, so they pushed on, climbing the switchbacks up the slope until they reached a small stone hut built in the 1930s. At this point, the weather was kind of getting a little bad, so they huddled in the shelter for about 10 to 15 minutes before continuing on. So once they got moving again, they started skirting a high ridge as they edged closer to the summit. By that point, the wind was starting to die down, and they could look to the north and see climbers coming up the standard route, which is the route that they had planned to hike. So it's same day now, late morning, and at this point, they had been on the trail for more than 4.5 hours, and Eric began to worry that they were going to be much later getting home than they had planned. And this is primarily because Michelle was falling behind 30 to 60 feet behind him. So on the final stretch to the summit, and they estimated that it was maybe 400 yards from the top or about 200 vertical feet, Michelle was exhausted and probably experiencing some moderate altitude sickness. She said she was out of water, could not go any higher. So at this point, according to the incident report, Eric told investigators he offered to take her pack, but she said no, and then suggested they turn around. Eric then pointed across a boulder field and told her to head that way toward the trail down, and he would go quickly to the top and catch up with her. She had a couple of energy bars. He left. He gave her a vanilla bean flavored tube of energy gel and headed up. So at this point, they separated. So to recap, they're very close to the summit on the Halo route. They're about 400 yards or 200 vertical feet. Michelle at this point is exhausted. She's out of water. She knows she can't go any further. So, and Eric knows that it's going to be a tough hike back down. So sometimes, I know this from personal experience, Joe, you probably know this too. When you get to the top, you're like, yeah, but then you think about like, oh, I got to go down that now, which I think sometimes going down is worse than going up.
It definitely smashes your feet. It's faster.
Yeah.
See, that's the only reason I like it more is like the speed is seemingly 10 times faster.
I'm not afraid of heights, but I don't like going down as much.
You feel like less control?
Yeah, I feel like if I lean too far forward, I might just go off the cliff edge.
I just have to disagree with you. I think going down is way better than going up.
Oh, I don't know. That's
like me. Good for you.
I feel like going up, you're in more control.
Oh yeah, you're definitely more control.
Going down,
but it's harder.
Yeah. Well,
I'll read one. If you're on All Trails, I think this explains it. Brandon Woods wrote, "Not for the weak, did the whole loop, but the second half was pure torture. Nothing but boulder fields and at least 4 other peaks after Holy Cross to get to the stone cabin. Was the hardest hike I've ever done in one singular day. 15 hours, with at least 6 or 7 of those hours in the boulder field going up and down at least 45% grades."
And that's the Halo Ridge route?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I mean,
it looks pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it's a tough hike to do for you. Like the guy that in the intro, you said even the easy route he wouldn't recommend as your first 14er.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's desolate.
Yep. The views are amazing. And we're just snapping through some of the people's pictures on All Trails. Yeah, look at that. You're just climbing on this. It's not a walk.
Can you pull up the map again can you find a map that shows both trails?
So it was a Halo Ridge, and what was the name of the other one?
I believe it was the Northeast Ridge route.
All right, let's see here.
Because this is kind of crucial to what happens next. So while Joe's pulling that up, so the idea that Eric had was they could see people coming up the easier route. So they looked to the north, and they could see people coming up the other route. So Eric's idea was, I don't want to make Michelle summit this and then go down the other route. I don't want to make her go down this route again because that was torture. So his idea was she was going to cut across from the Halo route to the other route, and then he was going to summit and then come down the other route and meet her. And I believe the cutting over was kind of same elevation, and it was about a quarter of a mile in distance.
You said it was the Half Moon Trail?
I think that's where it starts.
Okay, so it either splits from the Half Moon Trail.
I can.
Okay, yeah, there's one. Yeah, look at there's one that goes either this way up the switchbacks or it goes along the bottom ridge.
So yeah, they said they can take the Half Moon Trail, which is the standard route known as the Northeast Ridge, or they can take the Fall Creek Trail heading straight south.
Yeah, that's this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems way harder because you have to come up here. You're not seeing it on this map particularly. Hold on, I'll blow this one up.
Yeah, and
'cause
there's
this one
Notch
makes
Mountain.
sense. Yeah, this one's gnarly. It just shows the one trail. You gotta look at this blown up map here.
So is that the Halo route?
So this is the Half Moon Trail. They both start here, but if you're going the Halo route, you go south here, and it goes past Notch Mountain. Oh, wait, no, I lied. Look at this. There's the Creek Trail. It's even worse than that. You either go this way, right, the parking lot, or go straight south.
Yep.
And you got to go up the switchback,
So
come all the way around this ridge to go this way, or you just take this way.
yeah, so
That's a huge mistake.
What he was telling Michelle to do was so she was going to cut north because they could see the other trail and the hikers. He was going to go up to the top of the mountain, then come back down the easier trail and then meet her. And she was just going to cut straight across.
Okay, so he went back this way.
Yep.
Instead of all the way around.
And my guess is because they, let's see here. They got moving again. So yeah, they were past Notch Mountain. So they were only 400 yards from the summit.
Yeah, so they're like right here.
So somehow it's hard to tell on that map, but like I said, Eric had he pointed across the boulder field and told her to head that way toward the trail down, and he would go quickly to the top and catch up with her. And that was the plan. So the plan was for Michelle to bypass the summit, traversing north to the west of the peak, and meet up with Eric on the North Ridge, their exit route.
Okay, so here I zoomed in on Mount of the Holy Cross.
Yeah.
So he went up this ridge to summit. He was telling her just to do this.
Yeah.
To
So
go-
that's
to cut it, and then he would come down this way, and they'd get out
Same
much faster.
elevation, about a quarter mile distance versus going up, 200 feet vertical
Okay.
feet.
All right, I get what's going on now.
Honestly, I mean,
It's
without seeing it, that sounds dangerous to me.
yeah.
But so that was the plan. And like I said, if she stayed at the same altitude, the distance would be about a quarter mile from where they split up. So they split on the saddle of the Holy Cross Ridge between an unnamed 13,381 foot peak and Mount of the Holy Cross.
Yeah, so here, right on
So
Google
right about-
Maps, he was trying to get her to go this way while he went up to this peak and then came down.
So, yeah. In theory, that I think that's,
In theory, I get it because going back the same way they came would have been so much more work.
and she's out of water. She's
Exactly.
already experiencing altitude
Because
sickness.
it's basically downhill only that way
yeah.
to get down versus she would have to go down and up,
Yeah.
down for each of the peaks they already passed.
Yeah.
So that
I can s-
logistically that makes sense. Like at first when I heard that, it sounded like he was being selfish and like, hey, I still want to summit. Just go that way and meet.
No.
And I don't want to go back the other way because it's harder. Just cross over there and I'll meet you. No, that actually, from what I'm seeing here, it looks like it makes the most sense.
Yeah, and we don't know her exact condition, but it sounds like she was getting pretty sick. And at that point, your goal would be to get to lower elevation as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and this would do that.
Going up and down, 3 or 4 times wouldn't be ideal. And if she's already not feeling great, like that would take all day.
Yeah.
So I get why they did that. So Back to the timeline. So I just wanted, because I looked at this too, and it makes sense once you see the mountain and what he told her to do. So Eric continued up to the summit of Holy Cross and stayed for less than 30 minutes. So Eric finally did summit the mountain at 1:42 p.m. He called his wife and said they were going to be late because they had gotten onto the wrong trail, snapped a picture of another couple who had reached the top and headed down. So as he's heading down now, he can't find Michelle. So he starts getting alarmed when he didn't see her on the trail down the northeast ridge. The man Eric dropped his pack and headed back up. Other hikers heard him calling for Michelle's name. He then backtracked south to where he had last saw her, but was unable to find her. He asked everyone he encountered on the trail if they had seen her. No one had, and he found cell phone service and called 911. And by early evening on September 24th, 2005, Michelle was reported missing, and searchers started heading into the field almost immediately. So between September 25th and October 2nd, almost over 800 volunteers, including members of the Vail Mountain Rescue Group, local law enforcement, and the National Guard participated in the search. They also had helicopters, search dogs, and ground teams deployed. Of course, this is an incredibly common theme in all of our cases. Adverse weather conditions, including rain and snow, hampered search efforts. Mm-hmm. So the difficult terrain and lack of clear leads also made searching increasingly challenging. Interestingly, we don't always, get clued in on what law enforcement did, but so law enforcement actually questioned both Eric and Ben, who was her husband, about the case. So they asked Eric several pointed questions. So now these are questions that law enforcement asked Eric. They asked, how could you take a novice up that mountain without more survival gear? Were you involved in her disappearance? Did you harm her? So one thing I didn't really go into was Eric was a family friend of Michelle and Ben, and law enforcement probably didn't know this at the time, but there was without a beyond a doubt that Eric was not involved in her disappearance. So ultimately, Eric declined to answer any additional questions without a lawyer present because he probably
they're starting to accuse him of something.
He got the feeling that they're digging a little more than just like out of curiosity of what happened. They're like trying to find out if he actually, murdered her. So they also asked Ben some interesting questions about Eric. So they asked him, they said, was there something going on romantically between his wife and Eric? And Ben said, there is nothing. He said, they asked him, could the hiking partner have harmed her? The husband said, Eric doesn't have a malicious bone in his body. And they finally said, did he have anything to do with his wife's disappearance? And he said, hell no. So,
okay.
Ben and Eric were ruled out as suspects early on, but it's just interesting. We don't really hear that side of these cases a lot. So I included that just because it was kind of interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it is now October 2nd, and after 8 days without any sign of Michelle, the official search was suspended. And with no solid evidence that a crime had occurred, Eagle County Sheriff's investigators eventually closed the case. So we go years and years without any leads in the case. In the time sensor case was closed and the search was called off. Family and friends and volunteers continued periodic searches of the area. There were some false positives throughout the year. So in 2009, a climber found a bone on rocks not far from the Halo route. Turned out to be a deer's jawbone. So that wasn't a good lead. In 2016, an investigator asked Ben to provide his wife's dental records for inclusion in a national database of missing persons. And in 2019, Ben and Michelle's 4 children provided DNA samples so that if her remains were found, they could help identify the remains. However, luck changed when late August 22, a man and his son were bushwhacking in the area north of the summit of Mount of the Holy Cross, below a rocky slope known as Angelica Coular. and they came upon a boot. So the boot had obviously been there a long time. It was surrounded by grass, but none was growing beneath it. The leather upper part of the boot was almost completely gone. It showed signs of deterioration from the elements and possible animals. The sole was intact, and the man reported the discovery to the Vail Mountain Rescue. So later that fall, searchers headed into the Holy Cross Wilderness to try to find the boot, but they had no luck at the first attempt to do that. Then the man and his son agreed to lead 3 searchers back up the mountain and show them the spot, and sure enough, it was right where he had seen it. So after photographing the area and bagging the boot, searchers quickly searched the area, hoping to find something more. They found nothing before heading down the mountain with the boot, which they turned over to the Eagle County Sheriff's Office. So after extensive forensic testing, they finally were able to prove that the boot was indeed Michelle's left boot. So this was the first really big break in the case. Almost, what is that, 18 years since she went missing? So
I'm on 14ers.com, and if anyone's ever going to do 14ers, this is the best website, but there's actually a good picture because they always have people drawing out the routes via images, and this is where that boot was found compared to the top.
Okay.
So I just don't know if this is on the south side, because if that's on the south side, it would suggest that she actually made the traverse back to the easy trail.
Well, it said it was on the north of the summit of Mount of the Holy Cross, below a rocky slope. So
okay, so this is the north side of the summit. Okay.
So that would make sense because Eric had told her to go that route. That looks very hard to traverse if that truly is where the boot was found, or the area.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Like, that's not the exact location, obviously. They actually didn't publish the exact location of where things were found because they didn't want people to stumble up there and
Go start looking around.
partly because of just how technical this area was. They didn't want inexperienced people up there trying to find stuff and then getting
Yeah, that makes
lost
sense.
themselves.
That makes sense.
So, like I said, searchers eventually went back up there. They found the boot. They brought it down. They did extensive forensic testing and determined that it was Michelle's. So, and this was in 2022. So, once news of Michelle's boot got out, planning for a new search started. So, this is in August of 2023. So Scott Beebe, president of the board of the Vail Mountain Rescue Group, who has also hiked this mountain more than a dozen times, played a central role in planning for this search. So he came on board of the group in about 2010, and he was always fascinated with this case of Michelle's disappearance. So he kind of took the lead on this new search once this boot was found. So the search team was planning what they called a scuff search in the immediate area. That would basically look for any signs of clothing or the hiking poles that she was using. So on August 25th of 2023, the sheriff's office sent a helicopter. Other counties sent cadaver dogs and handlers. According to one of the rescue team leaders for the canine unit, said the weather wasn't perfect that day. He set out with his dog Striker. The skies meant a short window for the helicopter to operate. He said we had 2 hours to do a hasty search around that area. He said, so we ran the dogs all through this campsite and then up the mountain. They had high hopes going in. Something as small as a tooth, but they found nothing. So Beebe said he's confident now that he knows what happened. He goes on to say, for 18 years, the narrative has been she got lost in the western boulder field. That's the area where almost all those who lose their way near the summit end up, and it's the area where searchers concentrated their efforts in 2005. And now, he said, she did exactly what Eric her hiking partner had told her to do. Instead of heading west, he's now certain she went north toward the route that she and her hiking partner had intended to take up the mountain. BB said he believes, however, that she mistook runnels, trail-like paths down the mountainside carved by rockfall and snowmelt, for the standard route. What she didn't know was she was on the wrong trail and went down into an area nobody expected her to go. Nobody intentionally goes down there. So BB said said the established trail was about 100 feet to her left. After studying the timeline, he believes her hiking partner missed the connection with her by only 10 minutes, which is wild.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That shows you she was only about 100 feet from the trail and missed Eric by 10 minutes or less.
And I don't understand why they didn't maintain eye contact. Like, from all the images we saw, you can see pretty clearly the summit and the side that she was going to be on. I'm not there, so I'm not going to speculate too much, but
yeah, and I don't know why. I mean, I would almost say, like, just give me your backpack. Let's go up the 200 feet. I'll help you up. And then it's just straight down.
yeah.
After looking at the pictures you had up there, that looks like a pretty treacherous thing to cross.
Yeah, and she was already so close, and I understand at that height, even when it's just a couple more 100 feet, that's a lot. But versus splitting up and going somewhere that's not a route at all, that can end up being harder.
Yeah. Well, and he said, BB said when he studied the maps that he noted that the area where the boot was found wasn't searched until the 8th and final day of the search. And he said by then there was 1.5 to 2 feet of snow
on the
area. So everything was covered too. He even said on the map of the area where the boot was found, searchers wrote impassable in several places, a notation to the amount of snow there was when they were searching.
So they couldn't even get to all the areas. So It took them 8 days to find just the boot.
Well, it took them 8 days to search the area. It took to the 8th day to search that area, and then they didn't find anything because there was 2 feet of snow.
Yeah.
So this is when it gets really interesting. So and this happened very recently. On September 13th of 24, renewed search efforts by a 5-member all-women team from the Vail Mountain Rescue Group recovered clothing items, 2 mittens, 2 ski poles, and a backpack containing a Nalgene, a digital camera, car keys, and a blue hat. At this point in time, I mean, that was literally 2 months ago, the sheriff's office is now waiting for forensic examination of the items, which could take months. So there's been no release on if the gear is hers, but the general feeling and thought is that it's most likely her gear.
Okay.
But obviously it has not been confirmed by law enforcement yet. And there are plans in the works right now as we speak to continue searching the area in hopes of locating further belongings or Michelle's remains. Crews plan to push into that area over the coming days and weeks, as long as the weather allows, in hopes of finding more answers to what happened to her and bringing her family some closure. So, very interesting case.
That spans such a long period of time.
Yeah. I mean,
that's incredible.
We're talking 2005. She goes missing. They find a boot in 2022, and then they find a lot of her gear in 2023. So BB recently, before I get into theories, BB recently met with Michelle's family. One of her daughters asked him what he thinks happened to her. And this was his honest truth to the family. He said, she wasn't dressed for the weather, he told her. I mean, spandex pants, windbreaker jacket, out of food, out of water, having some altitude sickness, no means of being able to start a fire. I said, we know that the temperatures that night got down into the low 20s up on the mountain. And I said, I think she laid down and she went to sleep and she didn't wake back up, sadly. He also said it was the opinion of searchers on this case that they don't believe there's any kind of foul play involved. So that is kind of the take of the official search. He was kind of leading the search. So I'll go into some theories here, and then we can get into our own theories. I'm going to start with most likely, and then go into what I've called less evidence but still possible, and then my final category, the deep end. So, most likely are accidental fall. So, given the mountain's rugged terrain, it's possible Michelle lost her footing and fell into a concealed area, making it difficult for search teams to locate her. Hypothermia. Michelle was reportedly fatigued and had run out of water during the hike. Exposure to cold temperatures, especially at high altitudes, could have led to hypothermia, impairing her judgment and physical abilities.
I just have to ask one thing.
Yes.
I don't know. Are you going to get in this in the deep end, or what prompted them to search a certain area to find certain things?
So what prompted them was the finding of the boot.
Yeah,
so,
but the whole dream.
Oh, well, yeah, I didn't put that into the case, but
we don't have to say it's an actual thing, but I think it's worth bringing up.
So in my reports,
it's pretty wild.
Yeah. So in my reports, Scott Beebe said that he had after the initial search, after the boot was found, and when they didn't find anything, he had a dream at some point where he is convinced that the spirit, or whatever you want to call it, of Michelle came to him in the dream, and she requested an all-women team of searchers look for her. So that's when he was the head of the team, and he decided to put a team of women on the case. And the women, from what I read, they had like an intuition of where to look. And it centered around the boot. So they had a general idea of, they found a boot. So, but they said, the women on the search team said they had some kind of intuition to look in a certain area. And sure enough, they found all of her gear. So
see, that's wild.
Take with it, what you will, but I found that
that's pretty
interesting. And
yeah.
I mean, it's pretty uncommon in a lot of the cases we cover where anything ever gets discovered.
So the rescue services chief, I just found this quote. The chief of staff, Emily Brown, said he had a dream that Michelle Vanek's soul remains body didn't want to be found by a man.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah. So he asked me if I would lead with a new perspective in a woman-led search. So like he put her in charge and said, I had this dream.
Yeah.
It doesn't want to be found by a man. So you build a team and go.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
Like it worked. Like he had a dream that it should, like, she didn't want to be found by a man. So he listened.
Yeah.
And they found all that stuff.
There's a picture
that's incredibly
of
wild.
the female search team. See if you can find that.
Yeah, I think I did see that somewhere. Let's see.
I don't know. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty wild, though.
I just think it's kind of cool just because these cases, a lot of times nothing ever gets found. And this guy had a dream, basically, that, this might have been the article. Yeah, there we go. There's the team. So, let's
give them props. Hold on. It is group-led search for Michelle.
You sharing the screen?
Yeah. Oh, I thought I was. There we go. From the left, Heather Parker, Jen Pirog, Camille Rolick, Anya Mintz, Erica German, and Emily Brown.
Yeah.
German and fellow Vail Mountain Rescue Group member Zach Smith on September 12th found items believed to have belonged to Vanek. So that's wild, though. He had a dream just saying she doesn't want to be found by a man, so just turns to his counterpart and says, go lead this team.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
That's just so wild.
They talked about, I think it was in this article, they talked about, just coming from a different perspective on the search, having a woman-led team could bring a new sense to, maybe what happened, and it worked. They found her stuff. And they may actually end up finding her remains, which would be the ultimate closure for the family.
Yeah.
I just thought it was kind of cool. The cases, we never usually hear about stuff like this in the cases we cover.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
So back to theories. Final most likely theory is getting lost. So after separating from Eric, Michelle might have taken a wrong turn, leading her off established trails and into more perilous areas. So those are the three most likely. So we've got accidental fall, hypothermia, getting lost. Those are all very plausible. A lot of evidence for that. The next couple are less evidence, but still potentially possible. So animal attack, some have
plausible, but highly unlikely.
Yeah, there's just really not evidence, but it's still potential theory. So some have speculated that Michelle may have been attacked by wildlife, such as a mountain lion or bear, leading to her sudden disappearance. However, no evidence, such as remains or signs of a struggle, have been found to support that theory. Another theory is abduction. Posits that Michelle was abducted by another individual on the mountain. This scenario is considered highly unlikely due to the remote location and lack of, again, any supporting evidence. And a very kind of less common theory is voluntary disappearance, that Michelle chose to disappear intentionally and start a new life. This is deemed very improbable given her strong family ties and lack of any indications of such intentions. Finally, we've got the deep end theories. So paranormal time slip or portal, cursed or haunted mountain. So there is a fringe idea that Michelle could have stumbled into a time slip or interdimensional portal leading to her vanishing without a trace. Mount of the Holy Cross has a reputation for its rugged and treacherous terrain, sparking stories of supernatural forces or a curse associated with the area. This is because of there's some historical myth to the cursed part of it. So in the 19th century, the mountain's cross was perceived as a divine symbol. Some believed it was a sign from God, blessing the nation's westward expansion. This belief led to pilgrimages, with visitors attributing miraculous cures to the mountain. And then there's a legend that tells of a Spanish monk who, seeking forgiveness for his sins, was told in a vision to find a cross suspended in the air. After years of wandering, he reached the mountain and saw the cross and died in a state of grace. So there is some historical myth around this mountain.
Okay.
So obviously these are deep end theories. So one of the really far off theories is energy vortexes, which we've actually covered in.
Yeah, we've done vile vortices before
vortices,
in one of our triangles episodes.
So certain individuals believe that the mountain is an energy vortex, a place where Earth's energy is coordinated, potentially concentrated, potentially causing unusual phenomena or feelings. And finally, I did not know this, but this mountain is included in a Bermuda Triangle of Colorado, where there's been a heightened number of disappearances.
So we got another triangle episode to do?
I think so.
All right, the Colorado Triangle.
Yes. So that is the end of my theories. What is your leading theory in this case?
Well, first, a word of advice would be to never hike in a triangle.
Yes.
Apparently. So I definitely don't think abduction or animal attack. How are you going to get somebody out of there? I don't think that's either the case. I really feel, and I don't know the best way to think of it, I feel like she attempted to go north.
She attempted to do what Eric told her to do.
Exactly. On the ridge, go north on the ridge, and just went too far off trail. And it's possible with her in her mental state, lacking the cognition, potentially just wandering the wrong direction and not making good decisions.
Well, like they said, the runnels look like a trail, but it's really from rock falls and snowmelt.
Yeah, but even outside of that, when you're in a state of hypothermia, and I say it from experience of not me, but someone I was with while we were trying to do Long's Peak, which is a very difficult hike like this one, it sounds like. And I read in the All Trails comments that it was very similar to Long's Peak in difficulty from a couple commenters.
Yeah.
I had somebody who got really wet and started experiencing hypothermia, plus had some of the signs of altitude sickness. And while he was wet and it was still snowing, he changed his clothes into dry clothes, the stuff that you put on in a tent, and then those got wet. So he started hiking back down to the car.
Yeah.
And I stopped him and said, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I'm going to the car. I have dry clothes in there." The car's like 10 hours away and it's almost nighttime.
Yeah.
Just no.
You wouldn't do that in a rational state of mind.
Exactly. Completely irrational. I just said, "Oh, but there's dry clothes this way." And he's like, "Oh, okay." I had to talk to him kind of like a 5-year-old, all right, we're going to go this way though, because it's safer that way. And I got him changed out. We all pitched in, gave him some of our dry clothes, but he was just completely out of it. So if she's already altitude sickness and experiencing some of the deliria. Maybe, again, like you said, the trail is really hard to miss.
Yeah.
I think she just wandered off trail, maybe sat down to rest and lay down. And when you have altitude sickness, when you die, it's like you go to sleep and you never wake up. So it might have been just like, I'm going to lay down and rest while I'm waiting.
Well, that's what Scott Beebe said, that he thinks that she might have she probably got lost and turned around and it was getting dark and she's just tired and laid down for a quick rest and
that's it.
Sadly passed away.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely scenario.
And then based on the weather, how there was 2 feet of snow covering the area where the boot was found during the search, that means it's next to impossible for searchers to find her remains, assuming that she passed away by that time.
Yeah.
And the fact that she was out there for so many years, the remains probably have been scattered by seasons of snowmelt and rock falls. And it's an area of the mountain, like they said, no one goes to those parts of this mountain.
Yeah.
People, when they get lost, he explained, I don't remember the exact what he said, but he explained that there was a different area where people always go when they get lost.
Mm-hmm.
Like the boulder field is where everyone goes when they get lost. So that's where they thought she went.
Yes.
But where she actually was is somewhere they never go.
Yep.
Which would explain why her remains haven't been found. No one's going to hike that.
Yeah, and that makes sense too, because most people get lost, and they said descending, so they would have been at the peak where she started from a different spot to get lost.
Yeah.
So I think I would bet all of it on that.
Yeah, I think the fact that they're finding a lot of her gear now, I am confident now that there's more ongoing searches that are going to happen that probably at some point they're going to find some type of they're not going to find like a full intact person.
Yeah.
They're going to find like a
skeletal
bone
remains.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, I think it's a highly possible situation that the family will get closure in the next year
I hope
or two
so.
at this point.
I still think the dream thing is wild.
They need to send that female search team back up there and keep. I mean, they are batting 1,000.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So.
No, that whole story is really cool. That's what a wild thing, and think about how many people might have like an intuition like that and just ignore it. Like, it was a dream, whatever.
Yeah.
But he's like, you know what? No, I had a dream that her soul said it doesn't want to be found by a man, and
and props
go
to
lead
him
this team
for telling people that story.
I know, right?
Because there's probably a lot of
They think you're crazy.
you think you're crazy, like.
Not a female team, just crazy saying,
Yeah.
I had a dream that her soul came to me and requested this.
Old Scott's lost it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I give him a lot of props for even talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I get why. Like, it's been 19 years or whatever it's been since she went. Like, we've exhausted all options. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take any lead I get, even if it's someone from the afterlife talking to me in a dream.
Yep.
So. I think it's cool end to a sad story, and I feel confident in this one that I think her remains will be eventually found.
I agree.
So other than that is the end of the story.
Yeah. Please share with us your opinions and your takes on this. But thanks again for tuning into our show. We appreciate all of you for listening and sharing locations unknown with your friends and family. Be sure to like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where you can find the videos of each episode. Also, if you'd like to support the show monetarily, please visit our website or Facebook store to acquire some sweet swag. And you can also subscribe to our Patreon account and YouTube, as well as Apple, where you'll have access to all of our additional episodes. And we send you stuff every now and then as well for being a subscriber.
Yes.
So lastly, when enjoying the beauty of nature, whether backpacking, camping, or simply taking a walk, always remember to leave no trace. Thanks, and we will see you all next time.